just want to say thank you for joining today's webinar. So this is all about accounts payable automation for MYOB Advanced, or rather, I should say MYOB Acumatica, as is now known. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Juanita Pothitter, and I'm from Avanza Solutions. And I'm really excited to team up with TRAILD today to bring this chat and demo to you. Now, most of you on the call should already know Avanza Solutions, as you're already using Acumatica and you're one of our customers, but I know there are a few of you that might be considering MYOB Acumatica. So just as a quick intro, Avanza Solutions, we're a dedicated MYOB Acumatica partner. We're part of the Verde group of companies, and we currently support over 150 customers across our product portfolio, which includes MYOB Greentree, Oracle NetSuite, and then, of course, MYOB Acumatica. And at Avanza, we're all about teaming up with certified MYOB independent software vendors, or more as we know them, ISVs or add-ons. And these add-ons or ISVs really further extend and boost your MYOB Acumatica solution. And so today we're really focusing on TRAILD. And I'm sure you're going to get a much deeper overview shortly. But TRAILD was developed in Australia, and it zeroes in on making your accounts payable process automated and secure. And this helps you manage your expenses, keeping you safe from fraud and mistakes. And at Avanza, we are really quite selective over which ISVs we choose to work with. We want to make sure that our customers really get the best solution, and we choose to only work with ISVs that are already certified with MYOB as an ISV. So I'm really thrilled to introduce Shraddha Somaya, the Director of Sales at TRAILD. Shraddha is a whiz at AP automation, and she's going to show you how TRAILD works with MYOB Acumatica. And some of the features that she'll be covering would be smart invoice data extraction using AI, supplier verification to spot anything fishy, and automated approval rules for easy invoice handling. We've got that right. So I do hope you find this demo helpful. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them onto the chat or the Q&A. There should be a Q&A button at the bottom. And afterwards, we'll have a Q&A session at the end, but if you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to myself or Shraddha direct. So I'll hand over to you, Shraddha, to take over.
Perfect. All right. Thank you for the introduction. Appreciate that. And thanks for sparing us some time. So today's going to be just a couple of minutes for the introduction, and I'm going to delve straight into the demo to show you what TRAILD's all about. We'll run through a couple of things. So what is TRAILD and how are we different? As you know, there's a whole lot of accounts payable solutions out there, and we really do specialize in combining AP automation with payment security. So we'll run through that. Your accounts payable challenges for many organizations, and then really the benefits of automation and the impact of kind of having frauds, errors, and mistakes overlaying your AP process. And like I mentioned, I'll then delve straight into a demo. So there's plenty of AP automation solutions out there. And with TRAILD, it really was born off the back of a fraudulent incident that our founder went through. And so, you know, most AP automation solutions really do cover the first two things quite well in terms of the streamlining and automation, you know, saving time on manual coding, with 2- or 3-way matching with purchase orders, and any kind of document management, OCR technology. It's relatively common. With TRAILD, we really do hone in on a couple of key differentiators. And the main one for us is that protect feature. So for us, overlaying our accounts payable process is the payment security feature. So fraud protection is unfortunately something that's more and more common. And as you'll see when I show you the demo, from beginning to end, TRAILD apply a level of payment security that's similar to the level of banking security that we have on our consumer credit cards. So, you know, the latest Business Insights reports show us that over 50% of businesses have a manual process for AP. And while the reasons for that are sound, really it's around wanting to have that control and wanting to have that visibility on the invoices that they're paying. So usually a day in the life of an AP team is that they have a stack of invoices to process. They then key those in and do those manual variants check against purchase orders and purchase order receipts if they are receipting. Generally speaking, there's a manual or slow internal review process, generally done by emails. And then, of course, you're then chasing missing information as well. Having done all that, potentially missing out on early pay discounts, spot checking rather than checking every single invoice that's being processed to try and spot errors or mistakes or even or fraudulent incidents. So in terms of AP automation, like the cost, if you have a manual process today, the cost to process every single invoice manually is about $26. These are the latest stats that have come out. So about $26 to process an invoice manually. Applying trailed automation on the top of that does reduce that cost down to $7 per invoice. So really, in terms of your total saving, it's about taking the monthly number of invoices that you pay and you process and multiplying that by the total saving per invoice, which is $19. So there you start to understand the type of ROI and the type of savings that you could have for your business by applying a level of automation. So this is what I was touching on a little bit before, but our consumer credit cards are protected by AI. So if someone uses our card overseas or we have a transaction that's been processed, we generally get a text notification to alert us that our card is being used. And if it's not us, we're able to call the bank relatively quickly and stop any future, future transactions from taking place. So that same level of AI the banks are using for our cards is what TRAILD has used to apply to your AP process. So really, rather than doing those spot checks and kind of slowing you down because you want to maintain that control and visibility, TRAILD is allowing you, as you'll see in the demo, to really quickly approve those invoices that are low risk invoices and really hold your process up if it's a high risk invoice and identify why it's a high risk invoice so that you don't have to unnecessarily do your manual checks and measures. So in terms of fraud, I know it's one of those words that's being used so often, and it really is something that's more and more prominent. Big companies like this that you're seeing on your screen, such as Google or Facebook or Coles, companies like that are more readily able to absorb any fraudulent incidents. When it hits SMEs and enterprise grade businesses, the stats can be really eye-watering and the impact can be quite large. And so really, where our founder, how TRAILD even came to be, is our founder was an exec within his family business. The invoice made its way through their accounts team, through their approval team, and ultimately was paid only to realize that it was actually a fraudulent incident. So the business email for his company had been compromised, the supplier had been impersonated, and that wasn't picked up in time. And unfortunately, the amount was transferred to a company offshore. And so that's how the idea of TRAILD was even born. He thought if it's happening to him and such a large amount was lost, this must be something that all final payment reviewers are coming up against, where they are reviewing invoices, but they don't 100% across the process from the beginning, and they're not really able to have that time to check every single invoice. And so that's how TRAILD came to be in terms of combining AP automation with payment security. There are a number of testimonials on our website, so please feel free to have a look at those. But also, I'm going to launch straight into the demo here so you can have a look exactly how it works. All right, Juanita, has that come up okay for you? It should be a white background. Excellent, thank you. So what you're looking at here is the TRAILD in tray. I've also got MYOB Acumatica open here. However, the process for AP automation when using TRAILD actually starts within the TRAILD interface. So the first step of the process is to get all your supplier invoices into this in tray. A couple of different ways to do that, but the easiest way to do that is if you already have an email inbox where your suppliers are emailing you, then the easiest way is to use that inbox to then forward those invoices to this in tray. The second way is this upload files button, and we support a number of different file formats. So I'm just going to go ahead and, you can manually, if you wanted to, you can manually choose which invoices to upload. So I'll just manually go ahead and upload a couple of invoices. Now, each invoice will take about 2 to 5 seconds to process and go through the processing. And in that 2 to 5 seconds, there's a couple of key things happening. The first thing is that the system's extracting all the information off the document. And secondly is machine learning. So it's remembering what you did with this invoice the last time you processed it, things such as GL codes and sub-accounts as an example, and it's memorizing those things from last time to auto-apply them this time round. So the idea is for there to be less and less manual entry as each one goes, or as each invoice supplier is received. So you can see that this is land. If I go to the invoices tab here, you can see both of these invoices have landed in a draft format. I'm going to start with this one here. The only difference between this one and this one is that you have this little black icon next to this top invoice. And that little black icon is telling you that there are receipts available. So this is in relation to a purchase order, and it has been receipted in MYOB Acumatica. And it's simply telling you that these are the receipts that are available for that invoice to be able to automate that three-way match. But I'll start with this one, which is a non-PO related invoice. As you can see, before I even click into the invoice number, the header level has been extracted. So things such as invoice number, purchase order number, if there is one, the supplier, the branch, the invoice date, etc. All of those header level information have been extracted before we even click into the invoice. So if I click into the invoice, on the left-hand side of your screen, shortly, you'll see a digital copy of that same invoice present itself. And on the right-hand side, the screen's divided up into three main sections. So the first section we'll run through first is your header level extraction. That's your invoice, your supplier, and your pricing. Then we'll move down to the goods section, and then finally the approver and who this invoice needs to go through to next. If I start from the top, basically what we would do is click on each field here and just double check that that red box that you can see on the left-hand side is in the correct location. So in this case, you can see that I've clicked on invoice number and the red box is around where it says invoice number. So if it wasn't correct though, every field will have this drop-down list. And as I'm kind of scrolling down, you should be able to see that red box is jumping around all over the screen. And this is our machine learning. So basically you would come and find the data point that relates to the correct spot that you're looking for, and you would click it, and it would memorize that for next time, so that the next time a bill arrives from this same supplier, our system knows where to pick up that information from. We already have 95% accuracy from the first upload, but this is just for that 5% that might be, the formatting might be a little bit different, or maybe overly complex invoices. You might need to teach the system where to read that information from. If I keep going down, if you have multiple branches, they will be listed here. The ERP supplier has been picked up off the document, so it's read that this has come from Bunnings, looking at the name and the ABN, and it's populated Bunnings here. And it's also brought back the corresponding information from Bunnings that exists in your supplier master data in MYOB. The reason we do that is for our fraud protection. So if there was something wrong or different about this invoice compared to every other Bunnings invoice that you've paid and the details that you have stored in MYOB, you would see it on this screen. So I'll just change the details temporarily to show you. And straight away, you can see that the system is saying that we couldn't find payment information on this invoice that matches what's in your ERP system. It's saying the payment details have changed. And last time you paid these guys, you paid them using this bank details. So this is just our first level of payment security, where we are checking the information on this invoice compared not only to your master data within your MYOB, but we're also checking it across details throughout the economy. So you're leveraging the power of the platform to be able to see how's everybody else throughout the economy paying Bunnings Trade, and is the way that you're about to interact with them the same way. Then on the right-hand side, we have our price. So the default currency will default to the currency that you have set up for that supplier in your master data. And we're just checking the pricing information here to double check that it's come from the right spot. So again, you can see that red box is in the correct spot, but if it wasn't, you have every single data point on this invoice to be able to come and train the system. So this first section and even the invoice date and the due date down here, we're just going to click and double check that it's in the right spot. So this first section starts becoming a bit of an eyeballing exercise where you're just spending, especially for the first upload, just spend a minute or two double checking it's come from the right spot, and then you can be confident that for the second upload onwards, it'll know where to pick it up from. If I keep moving down, this is the goods section here. So on this invoice, you can see there are a number of different line items, and this is not related to a purchase order. So in this scenario, if you wanted to actually extract those line items for further visibility, you could simply come and add this, click this Add from Invoice button here. Click Add from Invoice, and you can see every line has now presented itself in the goods section. And this has now opened up every line in case you needed to or wanted to change at a line item level, the tax category or the branch allocation, or apply a different GL code, for example. It'll allow you to do this now at a line item level. If you wanted to split a line item, so say, for example, this pipe fixing piece, which is for $208.56. If I want to say split that, say, for example, 2 ways, it'll take the overall cost of that invoice and split it out. It doesn't need to be split 50-50 as long as it equals 100%, but this just allows people with more complex AP needs to be able to allocate an invoice accordingly to multiple cost centers. So that's the add from invoice section. There is also add manual line, and if there is freight on this invoice, it'll also pick up the freight as well. So there's a whole this goods section is allowing you to have visibility if you needed to at a line level, or the alternative is not to extract lines and just keep it at a header level. If I keep moving down, this is the activity section here. Activity section is completely optional, but very highly used. So if I was processing this invoice and I didn't know what GL code to allocate it to, as an example, I could come and tag anybody within my organization and say, what GL code should this go to? And the benefit of doing it here is everything is date stamped and time stamped, and everything is contained within this activities log. So Melissa will get a notification and she can just simply come and tag me back and tell me, allocate to XYZ. And now I have my answer, but everything is contained, and this activities log will go through the whole process so that everything can be date stamped and time stamped, and it's a fully encrypted platform as well. The final section here, which is general information, this is where your header level GL and sub account is selected. And here is where your approver is selected. So we would pre-configure your approvers depending on your workflows and whatever your approval hierarchies look like. So for example, if you have a different combination of rules or conditions based on if the supplier is this supplier and if the amount is over a certain dollar value, then maybe it needs to go to 2 approvers, for example. So whatever your rules and workflows look like for your approvals, we will set those here in TRAILD so that this approver can be pre-configured and pre-selected. You will have a list of all your approvers here. TRAILD is unlimited users as far as the licensing goes. So all your approvers will be set up here in case you do need to come and override it. But this invoice is good to go, so I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. Now that you understand or know the screen layout a little bit better, this one should be a lot quicker for us to get through. So again, I'm going to click on the invoice and you'll see a copy of the invoice on the left-hand side. And again, we're just going to do our checks. So double check that the invoice number's been picked up correctly. This one's got a purchase order, so we'll just double check that that's been picked up off the document correctly. If you are using, receipt numbers or project tasks or jobs as MYOB modules, then these will be here as well. And just double check the invoice date, the due date here, and then just over here in terms of the amount. So that top section starts to become relatively quick. We've got our supplier here that's been populated with no errors or anything presenting themselves, so we can move on from that top section relatively quickly. If I go down to the goods section here, up here, if you recall, it did actually pick up 000636 from the document. So because we are integrated with MYOB's purchase order module, it's looked up that purchase order within MYOB, and it said that we have 3 receipts available for selection. So if I click on that button, it'll bring in the 3 line items as per the original purchase order. And each of them here is showing that, yes, it does relate to the purchase order in question. And these are the receipt numbers, receipt lines, and receipt quantities as well. So the idea of this goods section with a PO invoice is to automate your 2 or 3-way match. If you are receipting, then of course it's a 3-way match. And really, we're just looking to call out the variance here that might exist between the PO, the receipt, and the final tax invoice. So if I remove one of these lines, for example, it'll call out any unit or quantity variance around that particular 3-way match for you to now be able to take care of that accordingly. Maybe you need to call the supplier. Maybe you want to approve the variance. There are whatever your processes look like from here. We are automating that matching process for you. We also have this open PO and receipt selector. So if, for example, this particular invoice refers to more than one purchase order number, then this section here will have a live and native lookup into MYOB's purchase order module, and you'll be able to say, for example, these are all the open purchase orders for this supplier. So you can mix and match in terms of selecting line items across multiple purchase orders. If I keep coming to the bottom, I'm not going to use the activities log for this one. The approver has already been set as myself, and I'll go ahead and hit submit. Now you can see the difference between this one and this one. The PO one that we just did has gone straight to approved. That's a configuration. The three-way match was successful and there was no variance. So now it can go straight to an approved status and hit MYOB's bills and adjustments section. Whereas this one was not related to a purchase order. So this one's gone through the approval workflows now. That's completely configurable in terms of what you would like to happen. So we can set that according to your needs. So that first section was all around getting the invoice into TRAILD and going through each invoice to submit them and automating the three-way matching process and the data extraction. This next section that I'm going to show you is now what the approver would see. So the approver has access to this button called Waiting on Me. If I click on Waiting on Me, there's two invoices there waiting for our approval. The first one is the one that we just did together from Bunnings Trade. And the second one is one that I loaded earlier, so I could show you all what a high-risk invoice looks like. So this is now the approval screen. Any of the warnings that are showing themselves here also showed themselves on that first screen when we were processing the invoice. But if it hadn't been taken care of or investigated at that point, it would transition to the approver now for them to make an approval decision. So going back to our founder story as to how the fraudulent invoice was paid, with TRAILD, every single invoice will have this low, medium, or high risk warning so that you don't need to worry about doing your manual checks and measures. This will call out if there's anything different between the invoice you're about to pay and how you've always paid this supplier. So the types of things we're looking at is bank details. Are they matching against the invoice and your MYOB data? If it is matching against your MYOB data, we're also checking to see how everybody else throughout the economy pays that same supplier. We're looking for the PDF metadata from a formatting perspective to make sure that it's in line with the genuine and authentic Bunnings invoice. Maybe it's unusually urgent terms. So maybe you have 30-day terms with these guys set up in your MYOB, but they're asking for payment within 7 days as an example. Maybe it's a duplicate. Maybe there's excessive charges in terms of you've never paid these guys that amount before over the last 12-month supplier maximum. So anything and everything we can see that is different about this invoice compared to every other time, we will present it here as a low, medium, or high risk warning. And we will tell you exactly why it's presented as that risk warning. So for example, in this first one, if I click on it, it'll show me a copy of the invoice on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, it'll show me all the information that we did in the screen before. So the line items, the supplier details, the pricing information. If you want your approvers to be able to override any of this, they can. If you want to lock it down, some businesses don't want their approvers going anywhere near the GL codes and sub-accounts, we can lock that down. So that's completely configurable depending on what you'd like. But what you're looking at here is to show you that it's a low risk invoice. There's nothing strange or unusual about this invoice compared to every other time you've paid them or how everybody else is paying them also. So we can go down to the bottom, and for this example, we can hit approve relatively quickly. The next invoice in the queue will present itself. This is an invoice from Kingfisher. So assume that Kingfisher is a known and trusted supplier of yours, but this is coming up as a high risk invoice. Now, the reason this is coming up as high risk is telling you here. So first and foremost, it's saying that we couldn't find payment information on this invoice that matches what's in your ERP system. Secondly, it's saying that an invoice from this supplier has been recently rejected by your organization. But also here, it's saying that the value exceeds your previous ERP supplier maximum. So the maximum you've ever paid these guys is $1,345, but this invoice is coming up as over double that amount. So anything and everything, like I mentioned before, this is where you see your duplicates, you'll see your unusually urgent terms. It's not the first time you're seeing it. The first person that processed it also saw it, but it'll translate here to make it an easy approval assessment for you. So the idea of TRAILD is to make it nice and quick for you to approve those those low risk invoices and hold your process up when it's a high risk invoice so that you can investigate accordingly. Of course, we'll never stop you from making a payment, but the idea is to make it really easy for you to know when to slow down versus go quicker. In this scenario, it's a high risk invoice. So maybe I could use my activity log. I could tag somebody within my organization here and say, please call supplier to check bank details. I can allocate this to whoever I want to investigate this now. So I can allocate it over to Melissa, assign it over to her, and go ahead and reject the invoice for now. So that's still going to sit there in terms of in the rejected pile. It's just that once that Melissa's taken care of it and resubmitted it for my approval, it'll reappear in the waiting on me section here. So these are just all your AP statuses as we're making our way through. So we've checked the draft. There's nothing there left for us to process. Waiting on me is what needs to be approved. Rejected are those ones that we need to look into now. And really the ones we're interested at this point are our approved invoices. So that approval workflow is designed to work for your organization, whoever your approvers need to be, however many levels of approvals you need. We will pre-configure that within our system so that if I was the first approver and Juanita was the second approver, it would now make its way through to Juanita for her final assessment. So we can go as many layers as you like in terms of those approval workflows. Once you are in this section in terms of these approved invoices, you can see that these have all landed here now. A lot of clients choose to have this configured so that the moment they're approved in TRAILD, they automatically get exported to MYOB Acumatica, whereas some organizations actually want to manually export it themselves by coming into this approved window, checking the invoices that are going into their next batch file, and hitting this export selected button. So again, completely configurable. If you wanted to automate, we can absolutely automate that section. Once you have hit the export selected, or if you've selected it to be automatically exported, they land here in MYOB Acumatica, in the accounts payable section, in bills and adjustments, which is otherwise where your process would have started. So these are all your bills that are here. Here's our Bunnings one. And if I click on the little paper clip here, you can see that the copy of the invoice has come through as well. Now in TRAILD, there is a section in that first invoice section. If I just load, say for example, I'll load this one as well. When you first upload an invoice, there is a section there that'll allow you to add any supporting documentation. So here it says upload and view files. If I had maybe a delivery docket or maybe an Excel snip or an email chain or something that's relevant to this particular invoice that I want to keep together, then I could just simply go upload and view files. We support a number of different file formats. And if you attach that or append that with this original Bunnings document, then in MYOB, when a copy of those documents made their way, all of that will stick together. So whatever you've appended in TRAILD will make its way through to MYOB. This is now where you can go ahead and create your ABA file your EFT file or your batch payment, and you can go ahead and do that within MYOB. One of the other reasons that people tend to sign up for TRAILD is also this supplier section here. So in this supplier section is a mirror of all of your suppliers that you have set up in your MYOB. And as soon as you create a new supplier or import your existing ones, all of them will go through a TRAILD verification check and they'll get this tick of approval called verified by TRAILD. So that's how you know that the supplier has passed the checks that we've put it through and it's going to come through as a low risk invoice. If you wanted to do a search for any particular invoice, I'll just find an invoice from Qantas as an example. You can type in Qantas, go ahead and click on that link and it'll hyperlink you to every invoice that you've paid to Qantas before. So it starts to become a bit of your document repository as well and your document management tool also. You can see that the quality of this invoice isn't that great. Our OCR is proprietary and enterprise grade. As long as a human eye can read it, even if it's scanned or handwritten as an example, we're able to process those without any problem. That invoice that I just loaded for Avis Australia, I won't do the entire invoice, but I did just want to show you one feature up front around the processing of this invoice is if I click on this invoice number, it's actually an invoice from Avis, but it actually goes across 3 different pages. Now, they're actually 3 individual invoices, but all from Avis. So here we have a little split button, split invoice. And if I click on that split button, it'll run through our classification engine and it'll tell you where each invoice starts and where each invoice ends, not pages, but invoice. And it's applied a pair of scissors or a snip between each one. So I'm happy with the way that that's snipped and I'm going to go ahead and go split document and it'll process each one now as an individual document. So this is for those suppliers that send you one document, but it's, a lot of pages in between, or maybe you're scanning the invoices through yourselves and you end up scanning, 10 or 12 documents. You're able to load that as one and split it out within the TRAILD system. But once you're in here in MYOB, you go ahead, create your batch file. and then you're okay to go ahead and create your payment and upload it to the bank. You would still do your double signatures and your standard process from here, but the purpose here is that these are all of the MYOB fields, but we've also brought through the trailed risk score and the trailed approver name. So the person doing that final review now, before this batch file is loaded to the bank, is able to see, well, this is a high risk invoice, but it's been approved by Julia within my organization. So we're really trying to make it easy for that final reviewer and the final payment check also to understand and realize what's going into that batch file, and if there's any type of risk still remaining there that they need to look into. That's essentially the end of the process. So everything from the first stage, uploading and extracting and automating the three-way match, then the approval workflows and how the approvers see whether to quickly approve or whether to investigate further, and then that export out into MYOB for you to go ahead and create your batch file. Juanita, you had a question? I saw your hand go up. Or was that accident? It was an accident. Okay.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
accident. Sorry. I was actually trying to see if anyone else has asked a question.
Oh, fair enough. No worries. Well, it's actually good timing because at this point here, it is the end of your process. We do have a final payment review screen, and that payment review screen is basically a list of this is what it would look like. So it's going to show you a list of all of your suppliers that you're about to pay. It's going to show you whether they are verified or they have been verified by TRAILD or not. It's going to show you all the amounts that you're about to release. And also it's going to show you any final risk warnings presented before you upload this file to the bank. If everything's been done correctly throughout this process, it should look like this. It should show you all your suppliers with a tick here, and they should all be low risk invoices, because any risk warnings that have presented themselves have come up at the very beginning of the process. So they should have been taken care of well before this stage, because at this point, the batch file has been created and you're about to upload it to the bank. If anything needs to be brought to your immediate attention before you do go ahead and upload to the bank, we'll push it to the top of the list. This is telling you that you're about to pay a company called ACES Data and Digital. They are unverified as far as the checks that we put the suppliers through. You're about to release a payment of $601.95. There's a couple of things here that we should need to look into. So first and foremost, it's saying that no prior payments have been made to this supplier. They're a new supplier, and that could be okay, and that's why that's an orange risk warning and not red. But this one's saying that the bank details may have been manipulated. So nobody else is paying ACES Data and Digital in the way that you're about to pay them. It's also saying in this case they're ABN, but it could be within New Zealand or overseas supplier. TRAILD is a global company now. So we're doing the checks and measures within their relevant country, and it's saying that their registration number is not active. And this one's also saying that they're not registered for GST. So there's a number. This is where you would see your duplicate payments. This is where you would see your excessive charges again. But again, this is the final review screen. So the idea is that anything should have been taken care of well before it gets to this point. This is really only going to show you a screen that looks like this if for whatever reason your batch file has been tampered with, or for whatever reason, malware has been installed and it's been edited. So this is a great way to do your final review. If you're happy with the way that this file looks, then you could come to the bottom of the screen, mark the file as paid for TRAILD's audit keeping purposes, and then download the file and upload to the bank. So again, it's a completely optional final check because you've already got that information in MYOB as far as before you create your batch file. But people do find this a nice user-friendly way, a clean interface to be able to very easily and quickly see what's about to be uploaded to the bank. And with that, that's the end of the process. You would then just make sure you've got no other invoices to process, and that same process we went through would keep iterating and repeating until for your entire AP process. So with that, Juanita, I'm not sure if you could see any questions in the chat or if you have any yourself, but that's essentially the end-to-end process.
Yeah, I can't see any questions. I did have a question. I just wanted to know, the approvers in TRAILD, are they also having to be an MYOB Acumatica user, or is it just a data field that's being imported
No,
to?
if they're approving, the approvals are done in TRAILD, and we have unlimited users, so they don't then need to do any levels of approval in MYOB. Once they hit in MYOB, they've all landed here already, and this is now the part where you go ahead and create your payment file.
So they get an email notification that there's an approval waiting for them, and they just log.
They will get a notification, but they're also this waiting on me queue, tab starts to form, kind of like your in tray or your inbox. So yes, you'll get a notification every time, but also this waiting on me, because we are also mobile responsive. So whether you're making approval assessments on your mobile phone or from the browser, everything in your waiting on me is where you would want to check regularly. But again, you will get, it's just that emails can get relatively clogged up. So that's a good habit or good idea just to start getting into the habit of checking on this waiting on me queue.
Cool. One question from Audrey. Can you have dual approval in TRAILD?
Absolutely. You can have anything up to, I think we set to 12. I don't think any client uses 12, but yes, you can have a number of different approvers.
Any other questions from anyone? If you want to just pop them into the Q&A.
While we're doing that, I'll just talk a little bit about the process. So, in the event somebody would like to get trailed for AP automation, we do all the onboarding and the training on our end. It's a very quick process. It's actually more an activation as opposed to an implementation. And so we work with you and the team there at Avanza to organize that. From the client's perspective, in terms of their time, it's about an hour we need to train everybody. We're obviously available for longer, but generally after an hour, people are telling us to go away. They've got the idea of the process. And thereafter, it's a month by month. So there's no lock-in contracts, and the billing doesn't actually commence until we've done all the integration and the training as well. So if anyone is interested in giving it a go, please get in touch with Juanita and the team at Avanza.
Yeah, so we already have quite a few customers using TRAILD quite successfully. So that's why we thought we'd need to put this together to present it to everyone. If there's no more questions, like Shraddha said, just please, if you are interested, get in touch with either myself. If you know Wayne, you can get in touch with him as well, or Shraddha directly from TRAILD. And we'd be happy to put together, well, Shraddha will put together some pricing for you. And it's fairly straightforward, as she mentioned. So I think with that, if there's no other questions, that's probably a wrap and we can get back to our day.
Thank you. Thanks so much
Thank you,
for having
Shraddha.
me,
And
Nita.
thank you to
Appreciate it.
everyone for attending. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.